Let's take a look at my home theater using an Apple TV and how I use that in conjunction with Control4 to manage things like automatic lights and screen aspect ratios and such with programming and automation control. Pretty cool and super easy to do when you have all the right pieces of kit. Alright, in this video I want to demonstrate the use of my home theater JVC NX7 projector, Control4 automation system with an EA5 controller, and 163-inch plus Seymour AV widescreen scope screen, and how I use the Apple TV in conjunction with Control4 to manage all of this stuff. I did do a separate video with regards to the projector installation modes for 16:9 versus ultra widescreen content and how all of that stuff is configured and such on the projector, so you might want to check that video out. As well. In this video, I'm going to focus just very specifically on the setup and operation and programming in Control4 for the Apple TV and managing these modes. I should point out as well that in my theater space, I'm using a Control4 NEEO remote. You see it there lit up for the bulk of my automation-based control. You can't use the Apple TV remote and get the type of control and capability and such that I'm gonna demonstrate here. I should also mention that just starting off right now, the room lighting in the space is operating at about 15% or so. That's the normal lights on, walk in, walk out, not playing content light level of the room that we keep it at kind of comfortably. So on the screen right now, we're looking at the Apple TV UI. It's in a 16:9 aspect ratio mode. That's what the UI renders at. Right now, this is again about 133-inch image sitting in that wider 163-inch scope space. So we're going to go ahead and do this demonstration just using Avengers Endgame. Avengers Endgame is an ultra widescreen movie, of course. I'm just playing this. I own this movie on iTunes. We're just using the iTunes Movies app to play the movie. So we're looking here at the movie profile screen. It's in 16:9 aspect ratio. And so as part of the demonstration, one of the first things that I want to mention in terms of how I execute lighting control is that when I start a movie with the Apple TV, I start it with play. We'll have a new sync of the projector here. As it locks on to the frame rate, it moves the color filter in place. You might have heard that for HDR. And things in the room got a little bit darker. Now, if I also execute a pause, you can see the light level of the room came up a little bit. Pause and play off of the Control4 remote, I'm getting triggers to my Control4 system to manage that lighting state. That's pretty easy to do in the programming, and we'll show that off here in just a second. Note though that if I were to use the Apple TV remote to play and pause, nothing happens. There's no state back to the Control4 controller when the Apple TV changes its mode, changes its playback state, triggered from that remote. It has to come from the NEEO. It has to come from a Control4 based input to be able to pick up the fact that a play state and such is changing. So notice as well that nothing changed with my picture mode. I still have now, I have a widescreen image floating in the middle of the screen, in the middle of that 16:9 space. Apple TV and its currently available Control4 drivers doesn't provide any specific information back. So there's no way that the Control4 can know that we're in playback of a movie and it can do things as a result of that. Some earlier versions of the Apple TV drivers used to be able to do that, and it was awesome, but we lost that ability along the way. And so I really hope that with a future iteration of the Apple TV, or more than likely just tvOS, that we get some more involved type of control system integration. So then you ask the question, well, if there's no state, there's no control, how do you make this use the wide installation mode, the wide lens memory, to zoom this up and fill the screen? So if I bring the NEEO back in here and I go home on the NEEO and I swipe left, we can see here that there's a variety of like configurable soft buttons basically in the Control4 system. And using the Control4 software, you can program these commands, you can name them and such as they appear. So I actually have a couple of them in this list. There's a few with the K, those are specifically related to my Kaleidescape. Sorry for the zoom here, or the focus rather, I'm trying to make it look clear. But at the bottom, this is where it matters. I've got a normal button and I've got a scope button. So if I go ahead and hit that scope button, there is my zoom and my shift and my refocus to take that widescreen image, make it bigger, and put it on the screen where I want it to be. This is part of the JVC lens memory that after the movie and the refocusing, there's kind of like that refresh. It's pretty common, pretty standard when you operate it in this way. So if I look at this again, so we watched the movie, it's widescreen, zoom it in, looks awesome. We're all done with the movie, actually, and we go back to the menus. This is going to take a second to resync. Going back to 60 hertz frame rate for the UI, turning off HDR because the UI is in SDR. Now we're looking at something that is 16:9, but we are zoomed in, and you can kind of see very faintly that Black Panther right around his knees, Aquaman right around his waist, Spider-Man right around his waist, right? There's image going below the screen because we're still in that ultra-wide installation mode. So here I would just use the Control4 remote after the movie, put things back into the normal view. So we had the shift, we had the zoom, the refocus, and then we should see the blackout. Most of the time, there it is. Most of the time you get the blackout. And there we are. So we're back to Apple TV, 16:9 aspect ratio, filling the screen. You can do all this stuff with Control4. Let's pop over to the Control4 software and talk about specifically what's programmed in Composer to enable this stuff to work. Okay, so let's take a look at Control4 Home Composer version and go through the details of how to set up Control4 automation commands and sequencing and such with an Apple TV. I do like the fact that Control4 makes Home Edition Composer Home available to you. You can get it through your dealer. I don't remember specifically if there was a cost to being able to run and use this, and you can't do everything. You still have to rely on your Control4 dealer to do quite a bit in a Control4 setup. However, there is quite a lot of configuration, customization, and programming available here. If I look on the left-hand pane, I don't necessarily want to make this video be a Home Composer overview. I might do that in a more dedicated way in another video. But suffice to say, your project is divided by your homes and your systems, and in this case, basically your rooms. So I have a theater room, and within that theater room is kind of all of these different assets. I have my NEEO remote, I have my projector, I have my sources, I have my Anthem AVM70, all of that stuff, and the drivers for those things registered so that Control4 can access them and control them. I also have access to the Control4 lighting system. I have several can lights in the ceiling in this room. I enable 4 of them basically, and they are all linked on one circuit to a single Control4 dimmer switch on the wall that we see here. If we look at the lighting first, if I click the Apple TV, actually I need to come down here and go to programming. Let's refresh this view a little bit. Find the Apple TV in the theater with regards to programming, and we can see that Control4 kind of gives us these predefined Apple TV events. There's a power on event, there's a power off event, and most importantly though here is play, pause, and stop. If we look at the logic that's coded in, we basically say if the home theater room is on and the room is currently using this Apple TV, then we want to execute this command right here. Here's the meat and potatoes. Ramp to level 0 on the theater ceiling light over 5 seconds. And if I look at how this was programmed, on the right-hand side here we have actions. I can click the light, the specific ceiling light of the theater space itself, and all of these various commands I can access for controlling that light. I can turn it on, I can turn it off, I can toggle it, and here's the ability to say ramp. So I can ramp to any given level. If I wanted to go, say, to 25%, and I wanted to do that over 10 seconds, there's the programming command that would accomplish that, and I simply drag these over and I can put them in to the current script and the current programming. I'm just going to delete that because I don't want that to happen. On the Apple TV event play, you can see here we're ramping the lights to 0 over 5 seconds. I tend to use 5 seconds a lot for my ramping time all around the house when I want to either enable lights or turn lights off with kind of a fade on, fade off effect. If I look at stop, we can see here what happens is we're turning the lights on. So now playback has stopped because I hit a stop command on the Control4 remote, or potentially a pause as well. In either case, the movie, the content is being stopped, is being paused, because maybe we need to get up, somebody needs to use the restroom, somebody spilled their popcorn, right, whatever it might be, and they need to clean it up. So we want the lights on in these cases, and I'm doing just the opposite here. Ramp to level 20% brightness basically, on the theater ceiling light over a course of 5 seconds. Now, as I mentioned, if you do play, pause, and kind of stop commands from the Apple TV remote, I don't get the lighting control, and that's because those commands from the Apple TV remote go to the Apple TV. They don't go through the Control4 system, and the Apple TV doesn't trigger any playback state using this driver in the currently available automation setup of the Apple TV. That command state, control state doesn't get communicated back. If you use the NEEO remote, you use the Control4 remote, and you actuate play, pause, and stop commands specifically on the Apple TV device, it'll create the triggers to execute these scripts. So very simply, that's it. That's it for the lighting control on the Apple TV command modes. And just to re-stress again, the reason I have the ifs is because I had some setup in my configuration between the theater and the living room where I was using the AVM70 and doing some Zone 2 things. So I wanted to protect these commands if this Apple TV, making sure that these commands only executed when this Apple TV was being used for the theater zone when the theater was on. In reality, I could probably take these if conditions out, because in the system today and as I use it, we don't cross over use of the Apple TV. This Apple TV and all of its use is just very specific to the theater. And so fundamentally, I don't need these ifs, and I could get away with just these ramping commands. So let's take a look at the programming for the wide versus kind of normal scope control. That's actually not specifically tied to the Apple TV. It's tied to the NEEO remote. So if I come back here to monitoring and I look at the NEEO remote and I look at its properties, we can see the middle section here. We have an option for remote focused buttons, buttons 1 through 5, and we can give them a name and we can give them an action. At this point of the programming, though, it's most important just to have them in the config and basically to have them names. The text that shows up in the names right here corresponds to the text that appears on the NEEO remote when you swipe over to the page of remote focus buttons. And so button 4, there's my normal mode lens memory setting, and button 5 is the scope lens memory setting. So if I go back to programming, we select the theater NEEO remote, and we take a look here. There we have the ability to program the action of those 5 buttons. And if I look at, let's just look at button 4, the one that's setting basically the normal mode of the lens memory of the JVC, you can see how simple this is. It's literally one command. Select installation mode, mode 1 on the theater projector. And if I just take a look at the scope one, select installation mode, mode 2 on the theater projector. So if I go into the projector, this is again the JVC NX7, and I look at all of the capabilities, the commands and stuff that I can program, We can power this. We can issue all kinds of different commands. Here we have the device-specific commands, and amongst all of the things that we can program, so much stuff here. One of these is the installation mode, and there's mode 1 through 10. So whatever you name these on your JVC, the naming doesn't propagate through. The naming doesn't propagate through to what you see in Control4. But suffice to say, and as I explained in my JVC lens memory configuration video, you have 10 different modes then you can command. For my purposes, mode 1 is my normal mode, what I would use for 16:9, and mode 2 is my wide or my scope mode, which I use for 235 or 240:1 style images. And again, these are tied to these specific soft buttons on the Control4 NEEO remote, and for the purposes of the Apple TV, they have to be manually selected based on the content that you're playing on the system and on the screen. So there's an overview demonstration, how-to settings set up using an Apple TV, Control4 system, JVC projector, and all of that together in tandem to automate lighting control, lens memory control for your home theater. If you have any questions about this, please ask in the comments. If I missed anything or there's something that I can explain more, I'd be happy to do so there. Or if you have some more deliberate questions or expansive questions, easily could make some extra content and other videos about this setup and how I do it and all of that sort of thing. Look for another video coming to the channel about how to accomplish the same thing with Kaleidescape. Suffice to say, Kaleidescape automates this in a much more advanced way than the Apple TV is able to achieve right now. And do look back to my prior video all about the JVC lens memories and the settings and the installation modes, where I go over the details of how those are specifically set up on the projector and managed and operated on the unit itself, again using that JVC NX7. So please do all the regular YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Please feel free to share this video around if you know folks or groups and such that this information could benefit. Otherwise, come on back for more, and thanks so much for watching.